All right, so we recently enacted a college survey in the state of Florida. It's going on right now, actually. It was passed a couple years ago on back of research that showed 68% of conservatives on college campuses didn't just feel as though the deck was stacked against them when they were in school, including by professors, but 68% of conservatives on campuses said they felt silenced. And so on back of that, a couple of years ago, the state legislature came up with a law mandating an annual college survey, one that'll be handed out to faculty in our state, one for students. And there are 13 questions, and they're aimed at trying to figure out how much room there is for ideological consideration on our campuses. Are our colleges really just indoctrination centers? And as this is taking place, and we have yet to receive the first round of it, it was absolutely opposed by the universities and our colleges generally across this state. You have to wonder why, if they didn't feel like they had anything to hide. But anyway, as that is taking place and we await those original results, interesting story here that's being examined by Matt Lamb, associate editor at the College Fix. And this one comes from the University of South Florida, a lawsuit that's been filed by a former nursing professor at USF. And it pertains specifically to what we're talking about here, which is the political bend of many administrators on college campuses. Matt, appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so give us the rundown and what's alleged to have happened here at the University of South Florida.
Right. So there's a professor whose name is Andrew, I believe you pronounce his name Bugajewski, and he was a nursing professor, and the dean of his school, whose name is Usha Menon, allegedly, made a lot of comments about white male conservatives, and expressed a number of allegedly, very hostile anti-white statements. So he alleges that she said things like, "You're a man, you don't understand. No offense, you're a white man, you don't get to weigh in on this." It's not clear exactly what they were talking about. And you're a man, you wouldn't understand. According to the lawsuit, Bugajewski said that this dean, quote, openly held a deeply rooted disdain for Caucasian men.
So, given the pervasiveness of this, one wonders, at this point, is there any indication anybody else has come out and said, yeah, you know what? Got an issue here?
No, I mean, the thing, of course, is that once it goes to the trial and discovery, there might be some more information that comes out, possibly emailed statements from witnesses, and we'll see where this goes. What we do know is broadly that the things that this dean is alleged to have said are part of a lot of critical race theory, white privilege trainings, that white men are evil, that they're privileged, they need to acknowledge their privilege. There's this lot of racial animosity created in this new, called DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, this DEI mindset. So a lot of things she is alleged to have said are probably part of a university's, training to faculty and students.
Well, and to your point, Matt, where we have over 2/3 of college conservatives that are saying, yeah, I mean, I don't even feel like it's safe for me to be able to speak up on campus, let alone, in the classroom. It really does speak to perhaps a pervasiveness to where maybe others are going to be afraid to speak up until somebody has taken that step.
Exactly. And it's not even clear that he had done anything particularly political, that he had gone to a pro-cop rally or had gone to a pro-life march or something. So far from what we can tell is that this is just basically because he is conservative. It's not even related to a specific thing that happened on campus. I'm sure your listeners and of all the different stories of conservative professors who have said something perhaps in a classroom or wrote an essay that got them pushback. But this just seems to be mainly because he's a white male and holds conservative beliefs that he's been targeted.
Yeah, Matt, I actually, I've been working on something with a professor at a university in South Florida that will remain nameless, but that has evidence that he was passed over for a promotion specifically because of his political viewpoints that have nothing to do with anything that's come up in the classroom. The culture that you come across, the College Fix, what you work on, covering the college landscape, is the perception on the right equal to reality? In other words, is it really as bad as some may think it is at this point?
Sure. I would say it is. We just had a story. There was a survey of Harvard students, not necessarily scientific, but they did survey about 40% of the senior class, which is a pretty good representative. I think usually 5% is the norm. And only 6.4% said they were conservative. Now, there's two ways to read it. None of them are good. One is that actually only 6.4% said they were conservative, or that even in an anonymous survey, maybe more are conservative, but they're scared to say it. Because they're worried about maybe someone finding out, a professor, and, revoking a recommendation letter, let's say. And so we definitely do see this on college campuses with all this talk about academic freedom and professors and teachers should be able to teach whatever they want in the classroom. It's oftentimes, conservative professors, of course, that are targeted the most. Or even if you're maybe a liberal professor, but you say that there's only two sexes, right? You say something that now is called conservative, which is common sense. So we definitely do see this pushback primarily against conservative views or right of center views in the classroom.
Matt, I came across a survey you're talking about with Harvard. There also recently was a Georgetown professor who said that there was no tolerance for conservatives and ended up bowing out on the basis of that as well. Have we arrived at the point to where there is kind of like this purification and talking about, like a Ivy League school, a Harvard situation, for example? Could there even be implicit bias in admission standards? We know that, race and gender considerations have been added by some of these schools. What about actually politics?
Right. So one thing that I believe has happened in admissions and also in hiring is that they've added things like you have to be committed to, anti-racism and diversity and equity and inclusion. So they don't explicitly say you can't be conservative, but they'll say you have to affirm this standard that generally conservatives are going to be more critical of and liberals are not. I mean, it'd be the same as if a university said, well, you don't have to be conservative to work here, but you have to show us your NRA membership card, or you have to tell us that, you voted for, you have to tell us that Donald Trump was a great president.
Right.
So there's sort of these ways. This is the same thing they've done, of course, with getting around rulings against affirmative action. They'll say, well, we don't discriminate on race, but we're going to create this special program for, low income Black and Hispanic students. Nothing wrong with helping low income students succeed, of course, or even racial minorities. But they'll say, and then you get extra points if you do this program that's only open to a specific group of people. So, there's no limit to the creative ways that universities have to get around, to get to discriminating against students and right-leaning professors.
Matt, do you have any advice? This comes up every so often. I'll get questions either from parents or sometimes students, and they're like, hey, I'm running into this or I'm worried about this. How do you think I should handle it, kind of thing? I mean, it was rough when I was in school. That was well over 20 years ago. I know it hasn't gotten easier. You have any guidance for conservatives?
Sure. Certainly before you go to college, if there's a way you can find a school like a Liberty University, Hillsdale, Franciscan University of Steubenville, that's great. Sometimes the community college programs tend to be a little less ideological. Their instructors tend to have a lot of more real world experience. So certainly there's a way you can avoid it beforehand. If you're in the middle of it, you're a senior, you got one semester to go, and all your professors are just really just aggressive liberals, not just they have liberal views, of course. Then yeah, how do you go about it? I mean, if it's really bad, you could, of course, go to someone higher up, a dean. Perhaps there's a trustee that's a little more sympathetic. Try to basically find try to find the most sympathetic person that's either a conservative or is willing to take your side on campus, whether it's a trustee, maybe it's a dean in another school, who can intervene for you. Maybe the dean of the business school, economics, engineering is a little more sympathetic to conservatives. And so if you can do that, you don't need to challenge your professors every time they say, I don't like Trump. Well, but if they're saying something, if they're, denigrating you for your religious views, your political views, military service, I mean, you can certainly file complaints. Sometimes there may be, harassment policies in place. I would say whatever the policies are in place at the university, use them to your advantage. So even if the harassment policies seem a little bit overboard, if you can use it to stop someone from harassing you, by all means, personally, I think you should do that.
Matt Lamb, Associate Editor at the College Fix. Appreciate it, Matt.